welcome to Spiritual Topic Tuesdays, presented by Randy Sands and the Spiritual Coffee House. We have a bunch of amazing people here tonight, spiritual people, and tonight's topic is going to be on who is spiritual and why. So let's start off by having everybody introduce themselves and what they do. My name is Randy Sands. I'm a psychic medium, animal communicator, tarot reader, and teacher, spiritual minister, yada yada yada. Let's pass it on to other people. They're more interesting. Leanne, you want to take it?
Sure. My name's Leanne. I'm from New York State. By day, I own a dog grooming salon. I work with the dogs that nobody wants to deal with. The harder to handle, the better. By night, I've been a paranormal investigator for about 15 years. I run a large paranormal team here in New York State, and I'm an animal communicator and psychic medium.
Chris Kern. I'm from Erie, Pennsylvania. I am an intuitive empath. I do readings, energy work. I'm an animal communicator. I do health readings. I do all sorts of stuff. And I am also at the end stages of my schooling to be a vet tech. So
Yeah.
very excited.
Wow.
And I too like to work with animals that need extra. So
Hi, my name is Wanda Hernandez. I'm from Miami, Florida. I would say I'm a jack of all trades. I was a nurse for many years, retired in 2020, and got tired of that. So now I facilitate sacred medicine ceremonies like combo, mushrooms, bufo, and women's circles, Reiki. Also, I'm learning tarot, and actually, I'm a student. Always a student, always learning. Nice to be here.
Hi, I'm Tabitha. I am one of the owners of Elemental Magic. That's the metaphysical store in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a witch and a Reiki master. I also do animal communication and healing as well. Thanks for having me.
Sarah?
Oh, I'm next. Okay. My name is Sarah Sachs. I'm a medium and a psychic which is what I do full time. I also do Reiki and tarot, and I work locally, but also internationally too.
My name is Angela Maria Herrera. I am originally from Colombia, but I live in South Florida. And I am a shamanic practitioner, Reiki master, crystal healer, intuitive, and a little bit of everything, but always a student, like Wanda said. Pleasure to be here.
We are all always students. None of us ever get it all. There's not enough time for a lifetime. At the end of this video will be everybody's contact information. So if somebody resonates with you and you want to reach out to them, you'll have the ability to do that. And with that, let's jump on into our topic. Lee, you got lucky one. Who is spiritually gifted and why, girlfriend? Boom, shakalaka.
Right? Let's start this off. So I honestly believe that everybody is born with some level of spiritual gift, whether it be an empath, intuitive, psychic medium, just psychic, animal communicator, whatever it is. Everybody has that power. What determines that is, first of all, whether it's something that you choose to develop in your life, your time here on Earth. I believe that that's really something that I think it's something, the farther I get in my journey, I think it's something that you really can't avoid. If you're meant to develop that gift, you're going to keep getting the same lessons over and over and over again. I really believe that. You're going to get signs that you can't deny, that you have to kind of force you down this path, kind of whether you want to or not. But I look at it something like learning how to play the piano. Some people are great at it, pick it up real fast, and do fantastic with it, like they've played since the day they were born. Other people might take a little bit more, work and a little bit more energy and a little bit more focus to develop those gifts. But I really believe that everybody is. And why, the answer to why, boy, that's a tough one. I think why is because there's no way after living this experience that I believe this is all that there is for us. Because if there is, we're in trouble. So I really, I really believe that there's bigger picture out there, and that's the big enough. That's the reason why we're supposed to experience every walk in life, and I think that it's definitely something that everybody has, just at different levels. It's something you can choose to grow and expand with. So I'm excited to hear what everybody else has to say about this one.
Oh, well, I think you just said it all. We can all go home now.
I
think so
agree.
too.
Yep, let's go.
Bye.
Um, woo,
Bye.
Thank you,
and I'll have a good night. We'll see you.
Leah. Bye.
Right?
Chris?
So I agree with a lot of what Leanne just said. I think we are all born with the capability of being spiritually gifted. It is the extent to which we develop that later in life that brings us back to the wholeness of it. And I also think, well, there are a couple of things that I think factor into that. One is the environment in which you grow up. If you are encouraged to examine and experiment with those gifts, I think you're much more likely to become a full-fledged, spiritually gifted person in the eyes of others. If you are taught to hide it, which happened to me when I was young, if you are taught to hide it, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to let those abilities develop to their fullest capacity because you feel like it's a shameful thing that you're not supposed to show to the world. But paired with that, I think, is also the extent to which you have young experiences with your spiritual self and your gifts. And when I was young, I had a very vivid, actually a couple, but one in particular, very vivid encounter when I was just 5 years old, and that stuck with me. So even though I was told that's your imagination, it doesn't happen, the normal people don't do that, in the back of my mind was always this encounter that I had at my grandfather's funeral, that I knew there was something more that I needed to do and develop, even though I was being told not to, even though I was being told to keep it in. So I think it is like a musical talent, like Leanne was talking about, except I think there's more to that metaphor too, because there are people that can play the notes perfectly, and then there are people that can play the music.
Exactly.
And there's a difference between playing the notes perfectly and actually embodying the music. And I think our spiritual gifts are the same way. We can all access the gifts, but not everyone can play the music, right?
Great way to put that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's where I stand with that. But I think everybody has the at least the basic capability of that. I mean, we do have that sixth sense in all of us, I think.
Wanda?
Yeah, I agree. As a child, I didn't receive that nurturing that I needed. Even as a young woman, when I would pick up things from people, I was told I was being judgmental, with these gifts that I've had. And I've actually put them away for many years. And I was like, oh, I'm being judgmental. And I thought that. But in reality, no, now that I'm tending to my garden and making sure that that I know I'm not judgmental. This is something that I know that I can sense people, I can feel things, I can pick up certain things. And not only that, just see spirits. Back when I was a kid, my mom like, oh, you're crazy. That's not true. You're not seeing nothing. Like, mommy, yes, there's spirits. Well, I didn't know how to say spirits. I would say it's ghost. My mom would just be like, "Tu estás loca." But yeah, she didn't nourish it like that. What I needed to like give me as a child, like it wasn't there. Even as a young woman, it wasn't there. They look at you like, oh, you're crazy. That's witchery. That's witchcraft. Yeah, but now I'm making sure I'm taking care of me, nourishing that spiritual side of me, honoring that part of me of who I am. And as well as my grandchildren, if they have those, even my children, my grandchildren, if they have those spiritual gifts, I make sure that they receive what they need to grow.
Awesome. Tabitha? What you
I
got?
agree.
What you
I
got?
agree with all that. And the one thing that I'm questioning is like for most, if not all of us, it starts in childhood. And you know that if you tell kids over and over again that that's not true and that's not real, most of them will be like, turn that gift off.
Yeah.
I just wonder why with some of us that doesn't happen. Like I don't know if it's not that you can't shut it off, but it doesn't stop. Like, you could tell me I didn't see a dead person in my room last night, but I know I did. And it keeps happening. And no matter how much you tell me that, you know, but they say you could teach kids, and I believe it, not to shut their gifts off by telling them, oh, that's not real, which of course my mother told me constantly. I was crazy. There's no such thing. And, that type of stuff. But I noticed that seems to be like a thing with everybody is that we've all had it and maybe some way suppressed it, but didn't completely block it off. Like, how come some people can, I guess is what I'm asking. And like some of us cannot just shut it off. Because I feel like everyone else, like I feel like to a degree, everybody is gifted some way. And I feel like everybody can communicate with the spirits on some level. And like maybe you're a professional or maybe you're just a beginner, maybe you don't believe in it at all. But I think, it depends on the person, whether they accept it, and believe in that gift. Because you could ask a room full of people and most of them might be like, I don't believe in that, or I can't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's nothing that I can do. But, most of them can, and they just refuse to accept it, I guess.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. My turn now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, first thing, I do believe that everybody is born with some sort of abilities. And I use abilities and talent instead of gifted because gifted kind of, well, first of all, I hate kind of like that new agey talk stuff, but I think the gifted maybe sets us apart from other people, like we're better than or something like that. But so it's semantics. So I prefer to use talent or ability. And I think everybody is born with it, with this to some degree. It's just a matter of your upbringing, pretty much. Because I think some kids will just shove it down, and then the dam bursts when when they grow up, that sort of thing. But and I agree with what everybody says. But one important thing that I want to stress is that while it's really nice to have a spiritual community and like-minded people, you can't use that to escape from life or the world. And it's very important as a spiritual person to belong to a community and care what happens, you know, with people. And also that, especially for those that read, any kind of bigotry like racism or anti-LGBT or any of that sort of thing. First of all, on the practical level, it's anything judgmental about that's really going to shave off your client list quite a bit. But I think the one thing that, I think that the one thing is that, people do come in with their prejudices, but once you start talking to people in a reading, then the reader grows in that they say, I can't afford that luxury. So you really have to lose your judgmental thing to be truly, to really be able to truly reach out to everyone. So I really believe that, it's interesting because people talk about playing the piano, being an artist, and I have a theater background, and I realize that we're using the same side of the brain to do this sort of work as we would as an artist. And that's why a lot of people like us do have some artistic abilities too, like I like photography, that sort of thing, because you are using that kind of part of the brain. Plus you can relate, maybe blending with spirit as I did with blending with the role in a play, that sort of thing. So it's all very connected. But I really think that people have to know what's going on in the world, because I've seen, otherwise very good people on YouTube, and we've been inundated with all of these predictions for the upcoming year. And yet I have seen some people who will make a prediction without knowing how government works. They'll say this, that, or the other thing. No, and I know that that's absolutely impossible, because that's not the way our government works, or the British government, or whatever. So, I guess what I'm basically saying is that to be spiritual and to develop your talents, you really have to understand what's going on and learn about other things, because it really deepens your ability as a reader, and as a healer too, as far as having sympathy for people and being really compassionate, that sort of thing. So I think one of the big things is, while we have our community, is to expand our interests in the rest of the world and learn things about that, that improves our abilities too. So I guess that's enough for me.
I think that every being that decided to experience this timeline, this work on this place that we are at right now, is spiritually gifted in a different way, though. I think that we all have innate gifts that we came. Some are more aware, some are less aware, some have more connection with divinity, with other realms. They can work with other entities, or they can attain different goals in spirituality. But at the end of the day, I think if a person is gifted, has a heightened intuition, and it's more than anything empathic, just like Sarah said, because if you don't have empathy for others, no matter who they are, what they are, then I don't think you can be spiritually gifted. And also, Tabitha said that she couldn't turn off the switch. And let me tell you something. I had the fortune of having a mom who was a Reiki master, a healer, and I used to play sound bowls at home when I was 9, but it wasn't the expensive and cool balls that Randy has. It was glass balls with water, and we will play in different size of water, and I remember every week playing those. But then I had a lot of gifts that I, out of my rebel time was not early teens, mine was around 20. And I decided to kind of get away from everything. And I was awakened again after a really tragic situation. So I think that some people get those gifts back, and that get those switches on after something really has made a huge change in their lives. So that's my input.
All right. Now I'll give mine, and then what we'll do is we'll have everybody go back and, comment any more on anything that popped up for them. Much like Sarah, I like the word abilities better than gifts. I use gifts for this video so that we could reach younger generations, because let's face it, spiritually, they're the future. And without them, spiritualism, where will it be? As a teacher of mediumship and animal communication, it is 100% my belief that every single person has the ability to tap into the spiritual realm. I hate to bring up religion in this, but let's look at that for a second. Every single religion talks about the afterlife. Now, I would have a hard time thinking whatever you label creator, whatever word works for you is fine. But I would have a hard time believing that that energy would be cruel enough to rip loved ones away and give us no ability to communicate with them. I have a hard time with that personally, because if that's the case, you can keep it. I
Me
don't
too.
want it. It's also my belief that every person is born innocent. They're born pure of heart, and they have active abilities, which is why kids have imaginary friends. Trust me, they're not imaginary. It's either their spirit guides playing with them or their loved ones on the other side that are playing with them. It's also my belief, and this might help Tabitha with a question she had. It's also my belief that when kids start going to school, dealing with school, dealing with whatever may be going on in the home, going to grandma's, going to play sports, dance, music class, everything else that comes along, they start delving more and more into the human experience and start shutting down on the spiritual level. Again, it's my belief that, not all people should tap in. The first thing I do with my students is I let them know what they're getting into. This is not an easy life, and Leanne is one of my students, former students. This is not an easy life, but it's an extremely rewarding life. When you do this life and you do it right, the universe will, in my belief, keep throwing chaos at you to keep you growing spiritually.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
When,
Yes.
when you're in
And
the comfort zone, you're not stretching yourself to grow, and spiritual growth occurs outside of the comfort zone. So it can be very chaotic. It can be very trying to live this life, but it's very rewarding. It's the rewards for me outweigh the other aspects.
Yes.
And I tell them that once you go down that rabbit hole, really there's no coming back up. You went down it because the universe was beckoning you to take that step. And time again, I have seen people try to back out of it for whatever reason, maybe the chaos and the growth or whatever is getting to them. And what ends up happening? Time and time again, I hear they end up getting sick, and it brings them right back into the fold because that's where they were meant to be. So if you're being called, or you feel like you're being called into this life, I'm going to give you my best unsolicited advice. And you know what they say about unsolicited advice, right? Ask yourself, if this is something you want to do in the best times and the worst of times, is helping people heal from a loss so rewarding that you are willing to walk through the fire? If the answer is yes, then I say dive into it head first. Just find a teacher that you resonate with, and one that wants to be a mentor, not just teach you and done, because you need a mentor. And doing this, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the more powerful it gets. If you don't use it, it atrophies. So as a matter of fact, how many teachers do we have in here tonight?
Teachers of what?
Well, we'll get to that in a second. How many teachers do we have? Raise your
I
hand.
think
depending on what you're talking about, teacher, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, depending.
What do you teach spiritually?
I call you, so I don't know.
Or Liam, what do you teach spiritually?
I suppose spiritually, probably a little bit of animal communication.
Okay.
That would be my most at the moment.
Chris, what do you
And paranormal.
Okay. Yeah, very much.
Tarot and oracle and healing. I teach healing too.
Okay. Wanda?
What do I teach spiritually? Love, compassion, seeing yourself in others, trying to nurture yourself, tend to your garden, because you can't be of service if you're not of service to yourself.
Okay. Tabitha?
Every Wednesday, our store, we do teaching class at around, is it 7? 7. And every week the topic changes, but we've touched on things like spell work, meditation, clearing yourself. It's like every week it's a kind of different little topic we'll talk about, but it varies. So kind of everything metaphysical.
Do you do it over Zoom?
We actually just do it over Facebook Live right now.
Okay, so there you guys go. Her contact information will be at the end. Sarah, what do you
Yeah.
teach?
I've taught mediumship, different areas of mediumship, tarot, spiritual growth. That's pretty much it. And I have, especially during the pandemic, I did some Zoom classes and had a circle. And so I've been teaching online and in person at Lilydale too. So and other places, even in Tabitha's shop too.
That's right.
Yes.
Good.
I'm overdue.
Yes, you are.
I'll be in to see you soon.
Good.
Awesome. Angela.
I teach crystal healing, and I am working on a course on a class that is transformative path of self-discovery and well-being.
Good. So I teach mediumship. I teach animal communication. I like to do it online because I can bring people from all over the world in for you guys to practice with. I teach tarot and a bunch of other stuff, but it's not just all about me. So let me finish my thought here. So you've got some good choices right now, just with the group that's here. Okay. So if you ask yourself that question and the answer is no, I would strongly encourage you to turn around and walk away with the intent to come back at a later date and revisit it and ask yourself the same question again. Because just because it may not be the right time for you now doesn't mean it won't be 5 years from now.
Agreed.
And
Yep.
that's what I have. So I'm going to open it up for the people in here to, make further comments. We'll just raise our hands so we don't walk on each other. Okay, Lee?
Mhm. I have to say, I completely agree with, I think, Chris, you said it.
Let's just go in the order we were in. So Lee,
Okay. Chris, you mentioned the environment growing up, and I know personally growing up, and it's still something I battle today. It's not something necessarily my family disagrees with, but they're not necessarily on board. I get how crazy it sounds. I mean, when you really look at it, it sounds crazy, right? The spiritual path. It was something my mom understood. Funny enough, my mom passed away young, so that was my support system. And she made me realize I wasn't crazy. Some of these things were happening, and it gave me enough of an outlet to look at it. But I've also learned over the years, through classes with Randi, and I've trained with Mavis Patilla, I trained with Thomas John. I've trained with some really fantastic people out there and learned a lot. But I keep coming back because just because where I'm at my stage in my development right now doesn't mean I won't need a lesson that I had 6 years ago, or a lesson that I haven't had yet to make any sense, but in 5 years it might make more sense. We're all over the place with this journey, and it really does come down to where you're at. I truly believe we all chose this path, and we're all going to develop to a certain extent. And you can fight it. You can fight it all you want, but if this is where you're supposed to be, this is where you're going to be. It's going to keep coming back, whether you like it or not. So, I'm curious to see if you guys have had that same experience. For a while, I put it away. I said, I'm done. I'm not walking this. I'm not doing it. But it didn't give me a choice. So I'm curious to see where you guys are at with it.
Chris?
There's several things that are kind of all over the place. First of all, I want to respond to what Tabitha said about why some children, as they grow, suppress it and others don't. Like, we all obviously kept it alive in some way, even though we were told not to. And I think some of that has to do with the intensity of the experiences. Like, my first experience that I remember, I was 5 years old. I was at my grandfather's funeral. I went up to the casket. He opened his eyes. He talked to me. He held my hand. that has stayed with me forever, you know? And as soon as I started to tell the adults in the room, it was my imagination, right? And they shut it down. I learned later, though, that my parents, before I was born, had been interested in the paranormal. They had studied the John Casey and all of these things, and that my grandmother on my mother's side was a healer, and she hid that by becoming a nurse, and that the generations before that were hands-on healers. My great-great-grandfather, actually, they grew up in the coal region of Pennsylvania. My great-great-grandfather was called to houses around the town in Centralia to come and put his hands on sick children to heal them. So there's this history that was hidden, you know, I mean, it's there. And yet when I started to tell them that I was having these experiences and these gifts were coming out, it was squashed. So it's that idea of the intensity of the experiences, the connections that you form. If I had known that information when I was 5, I wouldn't have waited until I was 35 to begin to acknowledge and develop my spiritual
True.
side, right? You know, I mean, I still had experiences between 5 and 35, but I didn't allow that to become a real visible part of my person, as you know, as I was seen by the outside world. So I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is that the people that suppress it and react most violently towards it are those that are afraid of their gifts. My brother, I believe, is also gifted. He is one of the most fanatically opposed to anything spiritualist. Like, I told him that I was going to make a Facebook page and I was going to start doing readings under my own name, not a pseudonym. And he just went ballistic on me. He said, well, you're just ruined your entire life. You've ruined your reputation. No one's ever going to take you seriously ever again. I mean, you know, and it's all because he is so deeply afraid of his own gifts. So he has to clamp them down in everybody else. So I think those are two sides of that question too, Tabitha. And then going to what I think it was Sarah was saying about empathy and intuition. This goes back to last week's discussion when we were talking about what makes you spiritual, or what does spirituality mean. And last week I said it means living from a place of compassion and grace. And as we develop this spiritual side of ourselves, the abilities, the gifts, whatever you want to call it, we have to remember that sense of compassion and grace, starting with ourselves, right? That we have to have grace and compassion with ourselves, that we're not crazy, we're not, you know, unusual because we experience these things, right? Accept that, and then also extend that compassion and grace to those who challenge it because they're either afraid or they're ignorant in the truest sense of the word. They just don't know what to think about it, right? They can't change their views because of their own experiences. Well, we have to extend them that grace and compassion as well. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Wanda, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Wow, everybody's pretty much put a lot of input of what I've been thinking of. Yeah, I mean, there was a time like I said, I shut myself down, but there was a part of me that as a child, like I would see these things and my mom would say, "Yeah, that's not true. Don't there's no such thing. It's fake." I was one of these kids that was very, I'm going to say character has a lot to do with it. I was very rebellious. I'm not going to listen just like that. That was my little thing. So I'm going to say that character of like, nah, I'm seeing what I'm seeing, lady, even though you're saying not, but I'm going to say it's character too as well. I'm very rebellious. My mom used to always tell, you're so rebellious. You're troublesome. I was always the troublesome child. So the
You're the
hard-headed
Scorpio
one.
too, aren't you?
What did you say?
You're the Scorpio too, aren't you?
Yeah, you know us.
Mhm.
That's part of it too. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
First, I wanted to say, wow, did you plan for all of these people to be animal communicators? Because I've literally met maybe 2 animal communicators in my lifetime in person. And like we're everybody, if not everybody, almost everybody here is. And did you plan that? That's crazy. Also, so going back to what we were talking about as children, um, my experience when I was a child was like seeing them in my room when I was sleeping and I'd wake up and dreaming and getting messages from spirits. But my mom, of course, spent all of her time telling me I was, crazy. And then, yes, the attitude of, I'm not listening to you. I know what I see came into play. But it was just ironic that years later, maybe a few years ago, I was talking to my mom about growing up in this house and how I would see things. And she goes, "Oh, yeah, that house was haunted as hell." And I was like, "How dare you sit there and agree with me now? After all my life, you said I was crazy." And she was like, "I just didn't want other people to think you were crazy."
Right.
So, yeah,
Okay, thanks. Right? Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
I guess what I have to add to the childhood thing is that when I was a baby until I was about 3.5 years old, we lived in on a street in Squirrel Hill called Northumberland Street, and we were not near Shenley Park or Frick Park. So when my mother took me out in my baby buggy, we used to go to the Homewood Cemetery because that was a nice green area. So I always say that I started communicating with spirit when I was still in the baby buggy. So but it was interesting that you bring up the teaching thing, that I think this is a really important thing, that the best teachers that I have had do not want you to pledge undying loyalty to them, and they're going to be your only teachers. I did have I won't, even mention the practice, but I did have an unfortunate experience of one who did that. It wasn't really nice, but other teachers that I have had that are very good. In fact, the first one was Janet No Havoc in Lilydale, she passed away. Well, it's almost 2 years ago now, or a couple years ago. And she was the one that encouraged a lot of us to go to Arthur Findlay in the UK and have other teachers. And over there, they always encouraged us to have other teachers or tutors, and to not just be I mean, sometimes you would kind of gravitate towards one, but I found that they were very wise people, in that I did go to a couple of other course organizers, and because you really do need to get different points of view, so you can get a whole bunch of knowledge and then you kind of make it yourself and make your own style. And it also, another very important spiritual principle is, it shows that they're secure enough that they don't need to have you be completely loyal to them. And that also goes with clients as well, because it gets down to this competition, which is very unspiritual. And one of the tutors said people shouldn't be fighting over who gets the readings, because there's enough dead people to go around for everybody.
True.
That's true. That's true.
I don't know that you would hear that in the States as much as you hear that they have a different attitude about that, but it's very true. So it's really about being secure in yourself, which is the positive side of the ego, but to try to really minimalize the competitiveness and the crying for loyalty, and to be secure enough in it's your own person, and as a whatever you're doing, and as a teacher, to know that it's good to encourage for people to go to other people. So
And-
that's pretty much how I'd kind of wrap that up.
Angela, I'm going to jump ahead of you for just one
Okay.
second.
Yeah.
You don't know that you would get much of that in the States, right, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean that kind of humor, like there's enough
Right.
dead people to go around for everybody. Yeah.
Leanne, is your teacher, what did I always tell you?
You're well, first of all, you always kind of said it not quite as politely. I'm a little more crass, but um don't just learn from me. You're not doing yourself any justice if you just pick one mentor and you go the whole way through. But it's funny, you do go and you learn from other people and you pick up little bits from other people, but you always come back. And like I said, I've always come back to Randy. I started with Randy, I don't even know how many years ago now, but it's true. I picked up little bits from Mavis. I picked up little bits from Janet, little bits from Thomas John, little bits, you name it, and you kind of wrap it all into one. But it's that daily. What I find the mentor comes into huge play for me is the daily battle, the constant, just get me through. And because the spiritual life is not easy. I don't care who you are. It's not easy. It's going to throw everything it can at you.
The reason I jumped ahead is because I wanted to make a point that sticks in my throat quite frequently. Jealousy, insecurity, greed are not spiritual values.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Anybody that claims to be spiritual and they have those glaring like red lights on a police car, that's a big red flag for me.
I always say that the people that are supposed to come to me for readings or health advice or whatever come to me,
Yep.
right? If they don't come to me, that's because they're supposed to go see somebody else. That
Yes.
it's not just destined for me to advise them. So if it is what it is, you do the readings that you're supposed to do, or do the teaching or whatever it is. Yeah.
Angela, I'm sorry for jumping ahead of you, honey.
No problem. I just want to say a couple of things. So, when I had the fortune of having the mom who was me today, but my ability, but I call it a gift because I think a spiritual gifts are a mix of abilities and experiences lived. So I think it's both. So 40 years ago, yesterday, at the time my dad passed away, I saw something. But I just said, Mom, all the things in the closet fell. I felt this deep thing. I saw the dog crying. I heard the dog crying. Nobody else did. And then later on, we learned he died and everything. After he left, I started working with the abilities and everything. But then I had a really crazy loss and I forgot about everything. And because of that depression, because of my loss, I didn't have the strength or even the attention to give to my daughter, who is also gifted, who is also a great intuitive. And what happened is she literally turned it off because she was completely scared. She could hear full-on conversations, but I was not in my right mind to help her. So back to Tabitha, a child can literally turn it off if it's afraid enough. And like Chris said, your brother is afraid, of course, because he cannot understand it, he cannot control it, he cannot manage it. So yes, it could be turned off depending on the circumstances. And also, we have the ability as humans, because we are really logical on also on our intuitive side and logical side, so we can nurture and keep on growing anything that we can learn. So I think we can, the people that don't feel strong enough, they can also bring all those abilities, empathy, intuition, and then energy work, and then they can use tools as crystals and tarot and Campbell and all the beautiful things that we can work with, the tools and the gifts we can mix all together and make this a pleasant experience with ups and downs, but at the end a pleasant experience with grace and joy.
All the tools in our tool belt, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, Chris, I understand your brother. Before I get into my starting point, I understand your brother. And Leanne will tell you guys, I was a high top level groomer for creative grooming at one point. I traveled quite a bit teaching. I did the short-haired coat carvings that, look like tapestry on dogs. I think you've seen some of it, Chris. This was my best kept secret for a very, very, very long time. And I'm going to be honest right now. When I decided that it was time to move into this, I started deleting a lot of my dog groomers from my social media because I thought that I was going to be like a leper. Well, guess what? I was embraced, and because I was internationally known groomer, I became internationally known for this because it just transferred right over, which is kind of mind-blowing because that doesn't normally happen. Leanne will tell you I'm the animal communicator for most of the top dog groomers throughout the world.
How I ran across her, in a class on grooming. We just connected. Next thing I know, I'm taking classes and this and that. Everything happens for a reason, for sure.
So I understand his thought. That doesn't mean that it's right because I had the same thought and I was dead wrong. As far as how I got my start, I don't think mine is really that interesting. As a kid, I wanted to name everything Sam. My mom will tell a story about one day I took a bath and I was bawling, and she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I want my Sammy," and it turned out Sammy was a worm I had caught and put in my pocket. But I named everything Sammy. And once my great aunt got sick, and her daughter said, "I wish my mom would just go. I don't want her to suffer." And I said, "Oh, she's not going yet. She's going to go on such and such day." And she did. She went at 8 o'clock that morning. That was when my journey really went full speed. And in the process, I come to find out that my spirit guide was Sam.
Wow.
And so I was playing with my spirit guides from a very, very young age. I have Sam, Jane, Charles, Thomas, Troy, and there's a couple. Dwayne is in there as well. Those are my 5 main. But once I picked up the ball and started running with it, it just like went in an accelerated speed, which can be quite painful when it's like that because, like I said, imagine the chaos that gets thrown at you.
A little bit.
So, I don't have I don't think I have such a great story as some of you. But, it's my story nonetheless. Anybody else have let me see a show of hands. Anybody else have anything else they would like to add before we close out? No? All right. Guys, hang out just a little bit with me if you would. To all the rest of you, may you have an amazing night. Thank you. We all thank you for the honor and the privilege of your time, spending it with us. Guys, would you like to say goodnight?
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good
Thank
night.
you for
Good
watching.
night.
Bye.
Good.